We've been using our home biogas unit since 2019, but recently we started having some issues with the flame where it was kind of ebbing and flowing, and that was because we could see the gas was kind of pulsating through and sometimes it had even cut out. So we needed to do a bit of troubleshooting to work out what was going on, and of course we needed to fix the problem as well. So follow along as we do that, and yeah, it was really interesting because it actually wasn't what we thought it was going to be. G'day there, it's Rachel here from Bush Edge Homesteading Australia, and we've got a little bit of a project to do today because we've been having a few issues with our home biogas where at the stove it's been fluctuating with the gas flow, and it's got to the point where it's actually not working too well now. In fact, we can't use it now because that gas flow is fluctuating so much that it actually cuts out the stove every so often. So together we're going to do a bit of troubleshooting today just to verify that yes, it is actually the gas flow, and I suspect it's because there's a bit of condensation in the pipe, and I'll show you why in a second. And if we do troubleshoot and find that that's the issue, what we're going to do is try and resolve that. So let's first of all have a bit of a look at the stove, and I'll show you what's happening, and then let's get on to having a bit of a look at the pipe to see if it is likely that the gas flow is the issue and a bit of condensation in that gas pipe, and then we'll get on to fixing it. So let's get into it. Here's our stove, which we have as part of our outdoor kitchen, and I'm going to turn it on and hopefully it'll demonstrate what we've been experiencing. There we go, there's our gas flowing and it's ignited, which is wonderful because sometimes we're having a few issues with that at the moment as well. Actually, there is a little bit of wind around, so what I might do is actually pop up our little wind shroud that we use, and I think you'll be able to see what's happening a bit better with that gas flow when I do that. Alrighty, I've got my windbreak on now, and this is just one that we get from a travel store. It's normally used for gas stoves, like when you do camping and stuff like that, to protect your burner. But that works really good for blocking a bit of wind with our stove, we find, when there is a bit of wind outside. And let's have a look underneath. And of course it's already gone out. Alright, let me try and start that again. Now that we've got this going again, let's zoom you right in so that we can see what exactly is going on with the gas under here. Now I've got the kettle on, kind of hoping for a bit of shading so that you can see clearly what's happening. But essentially what we're getting is not a continuous stream of gas at the moment. It kind of ebbs and flows a bit. In fact, it just turned off again. What happens is you get this kind of like high pressure flowing through as normal. In fact, I better turn that off. And then it really just kind of backs back with the pressure, and as a result you kind of get it flaring a bit with the flame, and then it goes off like we've just seen here when there's not enough gas flow coming through. What you just saw there is the issue that we're trying to resolve today. We need to make sure that we have a continuous flow of gas and that it's not getting obstructed by anything like condensation in the pipes, and I suspect that's what's going on. Now the reason for that is because of the distance and the way that we've got our pipe laid out at the moment from the burner to where our home biogas unit is. So essentially from here we have a bit of a pipe that runs underneath our kitchen. So it kind of runs down here, and from there it goes under the deck. And I suspect under the deck is the area that we're having a bit of an issue. This is where our pipe pops through under the deck. And from here, let me zoom out a little bit, kind of is attached to our beams, then goes into the larger pipe that was supplied with the unit. And you can see where it continues along, where it then runs kind of along where this retaining wall is. It then kind of runs along the ground, and then it comes to this conduit where it goes underground. And it continues underground to this point here where you can see it kind of at the surface. And we've done that purposefully so we don't accidentally hit the pipe through that area because we do have some plants through here. It continues underground through this zone here. We've got a bit of wood over the top because we do travel across here with wheelbarrows and things like that, and we didn't want to have any subsidence that affected the pipe through here. It then goes to a pit, and this pit here, if I spin around a bit, has a valve so that we can release moisture. So it's this one here. In fact, there's a little bit of moisture that needed to come out there today. And that's basically to release any moisture from condensation, and then that attaches to the unit. And of course, that's where the gas comes out from the unit to supply up to our house. Now, for the first couple of years we've been using this, it's worked quite well because this has always been the lowest spot. All the condensation goes to this pit. We basically open the valve, release it, and yeah, no problems at all. But for those of you that are eagle-eyed, you probably noticed where our current problem most likely lies, and that's the area we're going to address today. And that was that spot back under the deck. So let's get back up there now. I'm back under the deck, and what you're looking at here is what I suspect is our problem that we need to resolve today. And that is the fact that where we've pinned our pipe, some of the pins have come loose. And now what's happening is we've got all these low points in our pipe under the deck. And this absolutely can't happen when you're running your gas pipe. You need to ensure that if you have any low point, that you've got a place that the moisture can escape, because you do get condensation in your gas pipes. And what I suspect is happening at the moment is in every one of these little dips, like this one here, we've probably got a bit of a build-up of moisture in here, and that would be inhibiting our gas flow from going through. So to fix this issue, this weekend's project is to kind of pull all this pipe tight again, make sure that it's all pinned again appropriately, and kind of replace all the spots where it has kind of broken off. And what I'm also going to do is actually purposefully create a bit of a low point at a single point under this deck here. And we're going to put on a new little valve so that we can actually drain any condensation that we do get built up in this pipe, because it is probably a good 20 meters, I would say, between where our stove is and where our home biogas unit is. As I showed you, we do have that one point where we can kind of get rid of some moisture from that condensation at that low point, but I suspect that's not enough for something that is quite as long as this pipe is. So let's get a second one in, and that gives us a bit of an additional buffer to deal with this type of issue from happening again in the future. So here's our bits and pieces that we're going to need for today's project. We've just got a bit of irrigation pipe, and that's what we've actually used here. I think there's actually a little bit of information on this one that'll tell you exactly what we're using. So that's the 19mm poly pipe. This was just one of the pre-cut lengths because we only needed a little bit, but when we did run our line from the house down to the home biogas unit, this is essentially what we used. We did go to gas places, and let's just say they weren't particularly helpful, and plumbing places as well. They just weren't too keen to sell a gas grade pipe to someone who was doing a home biogas unit. So that's why we ended up just going to Bunnings, and we've been using the irrigation pipe, and that seems to work a treat. Obviously not advocating that you do that as well without doing your own research and making your own decisions on those sort of things, but that's what we have been using. We also just have a few clamps here just so that we can actually clamp on this piece here, which is what we will be using to be able to drain the moisture from the pipe. We're basically just going to create a bit of a T-section, which is what this piece here is for. We will then, from there, attach a little bit of poly pipe, then attach this piece here to be able to drain, so that piece with the valve in it, and we'll probably also just extend with another little piece of the poly pipe kind of below that, and of course clamp all that together with our clamps. So that's what we're looking to set up under the house today, and the bits that we'll be using to do it. In terms of this piece here, this one here actually came with the home biogas unit. So you saw in the pit we already had one of these installed, but there was actually two in the kit when we got it. So maybe they suspected that there would be occurrences like this and that we'd need something like this. So that's where this piece has come from, directly from home biogas itself and in that original kit that I got. All right, let's get under the house and get this all set up. Before we start doing any work on that gas pipe, we need to make sure we've actually turned off the gas. And if you haven't turned off the gas before on your home biogas, essentially you've got your outlet from the home biogas unit, your pipe that comes out of that, and then if you've set it up per the instructions, there should be this little valve here that you can turn off. Now it's obviously super important from a safety perspective that you're turning your gas off. Obviously the gas that we get from these home biogas units is one of the lower flammability gases, but it is still gas, it is still flammable, and that's why we're able to burn with it from our home biogas. So you obviously don't want any source of gas that could potentially ignite and cause a bit of a fire. The other thing is it's not something you want to be breathing in either as you're working on this, so make sure you do turn it off, and this is the spot that you do that. And the other thing I'm going to do is just kind of open up the line also where this stove is here. I do just want to make it really clear that there's no sources of ignition or anything like that around this point here. If there was a bit of gas to escape via the line and vent here, but it is just another place that some of the gas can escape, so it's not all just able to escape where I'm going to be working underneath the deck in a moment. So I'm back under the deck now and just starting to think about where I'm going to put that low point. And what I'm thinking is I'm not going to put it too close to the edge before where it kind of drops down with quite a bit of fall. I'm actually thinking I might do it kind of about a midway under the deck here, and that way if there is any condensation in the pipe, it can flow from both directions to that single sump point. So I'm actually thinking it's probably going to be about here that I'm going to make a bit of a cut in the pipe now, and that's going to be where we'll put in our little sump under the deck. Now in order to make that cut, I'm going to use a hand hacksaw. So I've got this one here. The reason I'm using this is because there's no potential source of ignition when I do my cuts with this. All right, well that's interesting. We didn't have any moisture come out at this point. So this spot here is obviously not where there is condensation built up, if that is the issue along this line. So what I'm going to do is keep tracking this back towards the house, see if we can drop that down and see if any moisture starts to come out when I do that. Well, we can't get much more full than this. And if I have a look up the pipe, so stick my finger in there, there's absolutely no signs of moisture at all. So this area here is not our problem. All right, let's have a bit more of a look at the other side. Here we are on the other side, and I've also now pointed this one all the way down the hill. And again, there is no moisture at all coming through here. So even though it looked really sus underneath this deck, like this is the area that was going to be the problem with a bit of condensation in the pipe, it appears that is not actually the case. So as with all good troubleshooting missions, sometimes the solution is not always the first thing you look at, and you need to do a bit more investigation. So let's keep looking and see if we can find where our problem lies. I should say that irregardless, what was going on with the gas pipe under here really was not okay, and it needed to be fixed. So we'll still fix that up today, but yeah, we'll definitely try and find the source of where this gas flow is getting impeded. Alrighty, so I think it's still worthwhile getting that sump point in under the deck. It's a bit of future proofing just to make sure we don't have any condensation issues there in the future. And of course we've already got the bits out anyway, so let's get that set up. Soften the pipe so that we can actually slip it onto the T-piece. What we're going to do is just pop it in some hot water, which I did manage to get nice and hot before the biogas cut out last time. And then once that's a bit more malleable, that should slide right on here. And of course we also need to get on our shore lock clamp. Here's our finished T-piece to go underneath the house. Essentially what will happen is we'll connect that to the pipe on either side, and from here we can turn it to open or to close so that we can drain any future moisture that may build up under the house. Alright, so before we reconnect all this, we've had a bit of a brainwave and thought if we run some air with our ryobi inflator through the gas line, we'll be able to see if there's any blockages in the airflow. So what we're going to do first of all is check the area from under the deck up to the stove, and I'll pop up to the stove in a second while hubby actually runs the air through, and then what we'll do is we'll check the area down the bottom. Okay, so I can feel that there's air coming through here, but it was a little bit impeded, so I've actually taken off a couple of the burners, and I do need to give them a bit of a clean out. In fact, I started doing that a second ago using this toothbrush here. And you can see there is a little bit of corrosion kind of built up on the inside, and I wonder if that's also contributing to what's going on. So let's clean this up and then we'll get on to the other bit of pipe. Now we've got the burner cleaned up, let's check that other line of the pipe. So I'm back down at that lowest sump. I've got this open. And all right, do you want to start it up? All right, so a bit of water did actually just push through there. Interesting. So I'm wondering if maybe we've actually got a little bit of subsidence here underneath where we've put this piece of wood, because we have been tracking over it. I can see here there's a little bit of compression that's going on. So maybe this area here is actually where our problem lies. I think what we need to do is dig this out and reinstate this bit of wood here. But we are going to keep that running just for a couple of minutes, just to make sure that we do kind of clear out and dry out as much moisture as possible. Alrighty, I reckon we're good. So I'm back under the deck and we're going to pop on the T-piece now. And we're going to switch to these clamps this time, because I wasn't too happy with the shore lock ones because we don't really have the right tool for closing it. So these ones here that you normally get with irrigation pipe, we're going to use for this next part because I do want a good clamp on it. here's our pipe all pinned back in again, but now we've got our new sump point. So if we do have any condensation in the future, we'll be able to dewater via that point, but that obviously wasn't the problem today. So let's head back down to the biogas where I suspect that problem actually is. Alrighty, I'm back down now at the biogas, and what I'm going to do is pull out this piece of wood here, and I'm going to lift that up and see what's going on with the pipe underneath, because when we pushed that air through earlier, it didn't take long for the moisture to start coming out of that sump point valve in the pit, and because of that I'm suspecting that this area here is where we may have a bit of subsidence and where that moisture might have been sitting. So let's dig it up. Yep, there's our problem. I can see it already. So you can see from the pit here, this pipe is actually going downwards now. And that wasn't the way it was when we installed this. So what's happened is we've had some compaction, even though we had this piece of wood here over the top. That hasn't been enough to stop the subsidence here. So what we need to do is kind of dig this out now, lift it back up again, and make sure that we've actually got full once again into this pit. I'd swing you around to this angle here because you can probably see it even better from this angle. So you can see here is where it was connecting to this piece here, which has the valve for dewatering, but from here the fall is actually going downwards, and that is why I suspect we've been having so much of an issue, because the condensation has been building up in this area of pipe here, which has been impeding that gas flow. So what we're going to do is dig this out now, bring that pipe back up again so that we can get the fall back towards this pit here. And what we'll probably do is also put something underneath so that we've got a nice firm base underneath the pipe for the future, so that we don't have this type of subsidence again. Probably should have actually put it in a bit of conduit in hindsight, but I'm going to be a bit slack at the moment and not put it in some now, because I will need to disconnect all of this if I'm going to put it in a bit of conduit. This first cut, let's just pop something underneath to try and get a bit of a nice stable base on it. If that doesn't work in the future, what I will do is disconnect this and actually pop a bit of conduit here. All right, let's get on to it. So I've got these little bluestone pavers here, and that's what I'm going to use underneath the pipe now. The idea is that these will provide a much firmer base, which hopefully won't subside again the way that we saw happen with just the dirt underneath before. It also is kind of lifting it back up again so that I've got the fall back towards this pit here. So I'm going to get those in place, make sure I've got my levels right, and then I'm going to start refilling this again. Now you may have also noticed I took a bit of dirt out from underneath the pipe up here, but it's not enough to actually put in a couple of these bluestone pavers. So what I'm doing is actually spending a bit of time packing the soil in back underneath this pipe, because the more compact that is, the less chance we're going to have subsidence issues in this area here. So it's actually worth spending a bit of time. As you can see, that there just moved quite a bit, so it's important we just keep packing that and compacting it. Alrighty, that's all pretty compacted back down again now. And yes, I know my construction friends were looking at this and going, hey, you didn't put it in conduit, and you really should have. Yes, you are right, I probably should have put it in conduit, but just remember, it's a bit of a home jobby and it's easy fixed, and I can pop it in conduit if this doesn't work out again in the future. And you know, in terms of where the gas lines and stuff run, we know where it runs. No one else is doing work around the property here, and if we ever do sell in the future, we'll make it really clear to those people where this line goes. So, last but not least, let's get our timber back on, and hopefully then this will last a while longer and we won't have those issues that we were having with the subsidence in the past, and hopefully we've got that fall back. Alright, so last thing to do now is give this a bit of a test and make sure that stove's working properly again. Right, so I'm back under the house. Let's make sure our new sump valve is in the closed position, which that is, so that's great. Last but not least, we do still have this open. We want to make sure that the gas is in the off position on the stove. And that all looks good to go as well. I should actually mention, when we did this, we also fixed another issue. I was actually finding the stove was too close to the back wall. And that was meaning when I was using big pots and big pans, I was actually having trouble actually sitting it properly over the burner. So when you're doing an install, it's just something to consider that you don't actually put your burners too close to the wall. All right, now that we've done all those checks, we can turn the gas back on. All right, she should be flowing. I don't know about you guys, but anyone on a steep block, I find everything is always uphill whenever you're doing a job like this. All right, let's get back to the stove. And what we need to do now is turn it on, remembering that we've got a lot of air now in the pipe. So we want to listen, and we can hear now that there is a flow of air, and that's going to be pushed by the gas. Don't stress that it didn't ignite straight away though, and it's not going to ignite straight away because all of that air needs to vent before we can actually ignite the flammable gas coming from the biogas. So let's just give that a moment until we start smelling a little bit of the gas coming through. Definitely not a time to walk away. This has just got to the point where the gas is now flowing through. So what I'm going to do is give it a bit of a test and see how the flames are now. And already that sounds better. I can hear the gas flowing. Ooh. Yeah, that is a way better flame than we've had in ages. And is it pulsing? No, it is not. That's a continuous stream of gas. So it looks like our fixes today have actually been effective. Now, as for which of those fixes were effective, I can't say 100% because we obviously tried a few things today with the troubleshooting and also with the fixes that we put in place. I would say it wasn't the area underneath the deck where we had that area of pipe kind of slumped. Even though we did put in a sump, which gives us a bit of future-proofing there against that type of issue from ever happening in the future, I don't think that was actually what the issue was because we didn't see any moisture there. There was obviously a bit of an issue with the burners. So some of those areas where we cleaned out the burners were actually quite blocked up. So that's something I definitely need to keep a closer eye to in the future. But I do think that area down near the biogas itself where that ground had subsided was the issue. So fixing that hopefully will be a continued fix for this issue. I did not use conduit. If that becomes an issue again in the future, I will actually switch out and put a bit of conduit there. But anyway, we have gas. We are cooking with gas. So thanks a bunch for joining me today as we did this troubleshooting exercise, found where our issue lied, fixed it, and hopefully this helps you if you ever experience any similar issue like this. So thanks a bunch for joining today and catch you later.